Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Hollywood Breaks. It's good to be with you once again. And of course, we have Keith with us from beautiful Philadelphia.
Hello, everyone.
It's good to see you, Keith.
Good to see you too, Tim.
This is a pretty heavy week for us with the Emmys coming out this week and some of those winners, which I know we want to get to, and some pretty exciting kind of things happening on different platforms, different companies and platforms announcing kind of like different distribution models. But before we go too heavy, I just want to point out, I think your Emmy picks actually won, right? Did you get that 100%? Should I have actually chosen your picks in the betting pool?
Yes, for best comedy and best drama, I scored 2 for 2. Yes, Schitt's Creek and Successions were my two choices.
I did not choose Schitt's Creek.
I'm brilliant.
Maybe because I didn't want to say that bad word over and over again. I'm not wrong. I don't know how your betting pool went. I actually didn't do so well. There's a lot of things that, even though I'm an Emmy voter and I watch most of the shows, I don't think I'm hitting the mark on what the overall demographics are choosing nowadays as best of shows. So I might be falling away from that center of the bubble. But some pretty interesting evolutions taking place within just watching the Emmy show. The show itself, interesting format, obviously trying to deal with a different type of format during the pandemic. I got to be honest, I think, I don't know what you can do, but it's way better than just watching a bunch of Zoom videos. I thought they did a pretty good job.
I think from a production standpoint, it was impressive. I would just, when I was watching some of it, I would almost break out into sweat. Think of what it would be like to be like a PA or a production assistant or even a producer on this thing. Just the amount of logistics, getting all the Zoom cameras set up, making sure there are people there to deliver the award shows, making sure everybody was healthy. I mean, just the logistical challenges to pull something like that off, and the fact that they pulled it off from a production standpoint was really, really impressive. And I think this sort of is a case study in sort of what the next phase of how we're going to produce these shows during this pandemic. I mean, we talked a little bit about PC fandom and sort of that being the future of the big convention space, at least for the foreseeable future. I think the Emmys sort of laid the guidelines for how you can pull off an award show in this wild and crazy time we're in.
Well, what's so interesting is that we're already kind of hearing a lot of things being canceled. I think I heard that New Year's Rocking Eve is not going to happen, so we know New Year's Eve isn't going to happen. But I can't imagine the Oscars being in this format. There's just something about the red carpet, the dresses, the glamour. I mean, I almost would recommend pushing the Oscars back to June if they have to. But to not have that moment on stage is just would kill the show altogether.
Yeah, I mean, and the show has struggled ratings wise. And I think, and I pointed this out a little earlier, I think what Jimmy Kimmel coming out and just saying, this isn't serious. There are a lot of more serious things going on in the world right now, but we need fun. And this is fun. And I think that was a huge correction in terms of where the award shows have gone over the course of the last few years, turning into these, we're amazing, very political shows that most of the country just isn't going to be interested in. I mean, LA and the entertainment industry in general is supposed to be, especially in the States, is supposed to be the preeminent entertainers of the world. And they can't even, I mean, the Oscars have always been sort of the big advertisement for working in Hollywood and just the big dream factory. And over the course of the last few years, that's been lost. And I think the struggle, to your point, Tim, and I think you're exactly right, is without the red carpet, which is, my wife, who isn't necessarily I would call a Hollywood file. She loves watching that stuff. She loves watching the carpet. That's the only thing she cares about. And then, the dramatic moments on stage and some of the awards that are always close. There's going to be something that's going to be lost.
And to me, like the point I've been making for maybe the last 5 years, I used to work on the Oscars, and back then it really kind of had Whoopi Goldberg. They were more playful. There's a lot of comedy bits. It actually became kind of a music show for a while because Bruce Springsteen, Janet Jackson, those guys were kind of the award winners, or at least nominees at early on. But what was the transition really to become this political platform? What I would tell people is like, but if you think about Oscar highlights that they show, they're showing like the Cuba Gooding Jr. moment where he's screaming and so excited. They're not showing the person ranting about the current president, because that really becomes very staged, very insular in that one moment.
Well,
although a very strong platform, it's not an entertainment space that you look back on. So I think the iconic moments we're looking for are more about the winners and the shows and the events. And I thought the Emmys actually accomplished that pretty well.
Yeah, I think there was some really there was a nice moment with Zendaya when she won and her entire family was behind her, which is really cool to see. You know, you're right. I mean, there's so many culture. There was Cuba Gooding Jr. There's James Cameron, you know, ending his speech for Titanic saying, "I'm the king of the world." There's challenging Billy Crystal to doing
one-arm push-up.
I mean, there are things like that they haven't happened in a long time. And I think I mean, this could be a whole nother podcast about the relevancy of Best Picture and how over the course of the last few years, it's mainly been movies that people in New York and LA watch and the rest of the country doesn't, which is, I think, a big problem for the industry in general, because when you go to Kodak Theater, for those of you who have never been there, at Hollywood and Highland, they have the Best Pictures all titles over the course of all the way back to the start of the show in the 30s.
Yeah.
And you can go through them and you're like, oh yeah, that was a hit. That was a pop culture hit. And then at a certain point, I think it kind of started almost with The English Patient.
Yeah.
Movies start moving to more niche sort of storytelling, and then it just starts becoming movies that like. I don't remember what won last year.
Well, that's the For Your Consideration movement, right?
Yeah.
Then the late 90s, what the Weinstein brothers did, and really kind of pushing this into a political platform and winning the campaign more than winning Best Picture.
Started with Shakespeare in Love.
Shakespeare in Love. That's the one. Yeah. I think English Patient might have been one of the tipping points too, because it's an indie picture that beat out all the blockbusters in the moment.
Yeah, well, Shakespeare in Love was when Harvey sort of basically turned up the Oscar campaign by 1,000.
Yeah,
really wanted that Best Picture, and I think
changed the landscape, didn't it? Like, and now it became very political in winning and political in presentation. But let's talk about this, because Schitt's Creek winning kind of says something different about what we're understanding of what the entertainment space really looks like. Schitt's Creek being HBO TV show, but distributed or mostly seen on Netflix.
Yeah. I mean, so for those who don't know, Schitt's Creek was a Canadian broadcasting company original, and it was brought down to the States by Pop TV, and it had a decent run, but I would argue it really wasn't discovered until it went on Netflix. And then, I mean, honestly, that's when I saw it. I mean, I had heard of it simply because I'm a big fan of Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara. So, you know, I've always kind of tracked anything they've been in, but it really didn't get a bigger audience. And I don't think it would have been discovered by the Emmy voting audience unless it had been picked up by Netflix, which is fascinating because Netflix itself didn't win a ton of awards. But I would argue that the Schitt's Creek victory was a Netflix victory, simply because I think they, as a distribution platform, proved their worth wholesale with that victory.
Yeah, but let's think about the economics of that. Just that one thing you're saying there too. Netflix pours billions and billions of dollars into original content, which honestly, I think they put way too much in the talent pool and not enough in the production tool when they make the original content. So most of it doesn't stick. Like you might spend a half hour or an hour and a half watching it, but you don't recall it. You're not telling your friends to watch it. It just fills in a small gap where it's really the sticky stuff that we want to see. But what happens is some of that stuff, like you're saying, this is, I believe, is HBO production. We don't know where to find it. HBO Max, what CBS is doing. Everybody has their own OTT platform. Peacock now being launched. We're really creating a mess of different distribution platforms. And so my ability to find the things that might stick becomes very hard. It's the what to watch problem. Yours is my favorite problem to solve. And this what to watch problem really solves itself if inside of one reliable OTT platform is the content you want to see. And this really shows that combination. Here's a great show, but it's distributed on Netflix so we can find it because people log into Netflix first, probably Amazon Prime second. And then the shows pop up. And if we can recognize the economics that they're playing out and trying to stop the competition, I think Hollywood might survive. But this OTT fight is really, really kind of a strange one that we're all in the middle of. I feel like it's almost a recreation of the VCR or VHS Betamax problem, or the Blu-ray Plus or Disney Plus thing.
Yeah.
But it's in a platform fight again. But no one's going to win this one because the content being attached to it in such a way, it's going to be a very different struggle for the viewer.
Yeah, it's interesting you should bring that up, because some people have posited in some of the blogs I read that this is really the cable fight of the early 90s all over again. It's like, when HBO came on, Showtime, and then, all these stations started popping up, and, the cable distributors were like, oh, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need this. And now it's basically, you think about Netflix, it's more or less a cable channel. I mean, it's basically what it is. That's what all these OTT platforms are, is basically cable. And the idea that people have been pushing for a la carte, like I want to sign up for what I want, when I want it, where I want it, is sort of playing out in the OTT space, because you have Netflix, which is basically the sort of HBO of the early 90s cable-wise, with these massive budget. Although, to your point, their quality of production is not nearly what HBO was at the time and is now. So I think that's definitely something that we have to kind of look at, is in terms of, if it is about finding the right show. So, for example, you talk about it, the what to watch problem. Succession, for example, won Best Drama. So that's an HBO show. And, people have sort of found that show simply because of the pop culture push behind it.
Yeah.
And I think that was largely but Netflix, Stranger Things, are we still talking about that? Like, it seems like after 2 seasons, everyone sort of forgot about Stranger Things, and now it's sort of like, it's kind of gone back by the wayside.
Yeah, Stranger Things had a couple other things, like there took too long to get the second season going, and then became too formulaic. Yep. The marketing campaign was brilliant. I love what they did to get people to rewatch, so that I get the initial hit. So kudos to the marketing team. But you're right, like it doesn't stick again. But and to your point though, I do think it's like the cable fight early on, but it's OTT platforms are so different than a channel, because once you get inside, it's not analog anymore. It's digital. So I can choose. It's infinite inside of each channel, and nothing's being pushed or distributed to me. So I don't have to like find my flavor. I have to find the OTT platform and then find the flavor inside of it, and then find the content inside of it. And then it's not filtered for children. Right. So there's a whole other platform I have to bring in to read the reviews to decide that. Like, it's just getting so messy inside of each of these platforms. Yeah, and then to launch 2 more is crazy out there in the universe right now.
Yeah, and it's also the UIs can be struggles too. Like Peacock's UI frustrates me beyond belief. It's weird because my wife and I I've been reintroducing my wife to Friday Night Lights, which great show, ran on NBC, and then DirecTV for about 5 seasons total. But every time I log back in, it doesn't save where I was. Like, that was the one thing I like about Netflix, is like you can go to the continue watching, even though it's maddeningly tough to find because they throw all this other nonsense at you. But in Peacock, you can't find it. Like, you literally have to go to the search and type in Friday Night Lights again to find it, because they're also throwing a ton of stuff at you. Yeah. And that's a whole other thing that sort of wasn't a part of the whole cable battle, was sort of the interface that you have your consumers interacting with. I don't understand the need to make it so complicated.
Yeah.
That's why I like Disney Plus, because it's simple. It's basic. It launches, you have your 4 worlds, you choose which world you want to be in. They break it down into sort of targets. Now, is it perfect? No, but it's definitely more user-friendly than I think Netflix is. They're just trying so much. I
swear the DVR solved this problem. I thought TiVo kind of solved this problem for us. We can find the shows, download the shows, watch them when we wanted to. What I want from my OTT platform is to be able to do that same thing. I want to find my shows, find out where they are, and then start where I left off. You're exactly right. Give me the pool of shows that I want.
Yep.
But let's ask this question, because I know part of this mess and the new competitors of the field is really Peacock, as you're saying, kind of that push, which was so interesting to me, because Comcast by itself is a cable provider, and that cable thing is just dying. And so they're almost, I feel like, eating themselves in the inside with Peacock and not really winning. CBS All Access going to become Paramount Plus, and then Apple TV trying to bundle up as Apple One. Like there's a couple of big moves still taking place inside of this war that we're seeing play out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because Peacock, a lot, if you are a subscriber to Comcast, you get it for free, the premium version for free. So there's sort of that tie-in, but at the same time, they're somewhat cannibalizing themselves. But then Comcast also offers the Flex option, which I guess is a little box that's similar to Apple TV. So you don't necessarily have to subscribe to the cable. So they're trying to figure out ways to sustain themselves. But it is interesting. I read an article this past week in the Wall Street Journal that Jeff Shell is basically breaking down, because the heartbeat of NBC Universal back maybe 5-6 years ago was their cable channels. That was sort of their bread and butter. The E's, the Sci-Fis, the USAs, the Bravos, that's where the money was. And when Comcast bought NBCU, the idea was, oh, look at all these cable channels that we can throw on our, we can make money off of, because every other cable carrier is going to want those channels. And now the sort of shift is like, no, it's all about Peacock. We got to get Peacock up and going. So I'm going to start pulling people. We're going to start laying people off from the cable channels, focus on Peacock, spend money on content. And it's sort of like everyone's scrambling to buff up their streaming service. But at the same time, it's like at a certain point, the content itself is going to be so overwhelming that how is anyone going to find it?
And so that's actually a pretty good transition to something I've been paying attention to and watching, is this whole evolution of TikTok as a platform, and the latest kind of movements happening on TikTok. Just the explanation of the idea that the data distribution, capturing, and storage, basically the analysis, moving to a US-based platform, has been some of the requirements of TikTok that our government's been asking. And the deal with Oracle and Walmart was allowing that that data to be handled within the US marketplace. Yeah. But with that purchase, and it changes every day, but with that purchase is this idea is the algorithm coming with it. And that algorithm really is the fight within TikTok. To me, what they're doing is actually trying to discern and distributing well what to watch inside of their platform. It's and the user interface to discern that is like, are people watching certain items? How long do they watch? And it doesn't require much more interface than just a swipe of a finger to capture the data they're looking for. Very brilliant in its platform, but to recognize it's an entertainment platform that's going to eventually compete with these OTT devices, and the complications of this OTT and the simplicity of TikTok. I think that's what that big dollar push was. That's why Microsoft was in the game. I have a feeling that's why Google was out of the game, because they would have gotten TikTok. They would have been the monopoly and had a broken up alphabet sooner than later. All over them. Yeah. But it's so interesting that what's happening coming from the back end of this whole thing is these apps that are consuming people's viewing time as well, and aren't the big players, aren't the big names that we know, the brand names we know that have been distributing for years and years. But they are really killing it. I mean, they're consuming people's hours, entertainment hours on these platforms or on these apps that are very different than the difficulty of kind of watching TV shows on the other platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also sort of dovetails with what we've been talking about, the changing nature of celebrity and the difficulty of getting production going in the COVID era. All these streamers are relying on that sort of long tail production schedules. Takes months. You have pre-production, shooting, post. That's months, and on top of all the COVID challenges that they're facing now too. Where it's TikTok and a lot of the other services, people are just creating content every day. There's something new every time you open the app. It's something new, and that is really tough for the streamers to sort of battle against, because one, it's been built to be shown on the phone. You don't need a big screen to see it. You don't need a TV. You just literally
you don't need Adobe Suite to edit it.
No.
And as a matter of fact, it doesn't have to be original. You can take someone else's content, copy it, and make your own version of it.
Right.
The repeatability of this thing.
Yeah, it's encouraged. And I think, again, that's sort of the challenge, and that's why so many of these big streamers are throwing money at big, we could talk about Amazon's huge bet on sort of reigniting the Lord of the Rings franchise, because they, Jeff Bezos is obsessed with getting his Game of Thrones on Amazon Prime Video, and sort of like all the effort and resources they put into that, and it still might not get nearly as many eyeballs as the latest TikTok video. It's just crazy. And I think it speaks to the idea that what these streamers are really going to have to figure out is a coherent what to watch strategy, how to grab people and get them interested in shows beyond just this typical 30-second promo trailer, standard marketing campaign that everyone seems to think is never going to change, and looking at some of these services and figuring out a way that they can be repurposes to help promote some of this stuff and sort of maybe tie in. And I think we saw a little bit of that with some of the Snapchat originals. And I think that's still a viable option. But it is really tough to be at a streamer right now and try to figure out the landscape and how best to get eyeballs on your content. And I think that's one thing that they really have to figure out is how do we showcase to people what to watch that's not necessarily just an algorithm based on what they've watched previously. You still have to make it simple and easy and discoverable to the point where, you're going to be able to build that sort of momentum that's going to keep the show going.
And our viewers that are content makers too, we want to draw the attention to that these OTT platforms or TikTok or these distribution means really are like a change of pace to what we're used to in content creation. And the consumability of the information, the production value or production quality that's there, even just the method at which you produce those videos are going to have to change. We're going to have to think about things differently if we're going to compete and get visibility out there. There's still money to be made. There's probably more money now in content than there ever was in the content game. Yep. So we're not seeing it in the traditional forms. And some of those that have been in content for a while know that distribution models are totally changing underneath their feet and wondering where it's shifting to.
Yep.
But the visibility of just content and the ability to consume it has become much easier. It's just that the competition's become more fierce because more people can shoot, edit, and distribute inside of the TikTok platform than ever before. So there are infinite number of content creators instead of that gateway model. But I think that's the focus of trying to understand what this economy is going to be for us. Like if we're going to be content makers, we have to be thinking through what our show is, who's going to watch it, why it's even being created, and then where to distribute it so that those pieces of the model can fit together in making the right kind of platform or right kind of content for the platform. Otherwise, as we're seeing with film and other places, like things shift really quickly and all of your investment can go down the drain.
I think that may be somewhat behind the strategy of what's happening with Warner Media, for example, which is also sort of undergoing a transformation under Jason Kilar. And I think the same thing with what Jeff Shell's philosophy is like, listen, we're going to have a main content hub where everything is sort of decided, and then based on what the project is, why we're making this, then determine the platform that's best in service to get you to the audience, whether or not it's a theatrical, whether or not it's a combination of theatrical and PVOD, whether or not it's a combination of theatrical PVOD with streaming, all those factors. And I think that's sort of where things are starting to head, where it was just like, okay, I have a movie, I'm going to go pitch it to Warner Brothers. Right? Or I have a TV show, I'm going to go pitch it to NBC. Now it's like, okay, I'm going to go pitch it to whoever the entertainment head is, maybe Ann Sarnoff. And she's like, no, I think this is great for theatrical. Go see Toby Emmerich. Or I think this is better for HBO Max. So go see them. So I think that is sort of what we're starting to see a little bit more of. And I think that's where the restructuring that's currently happening at some of these big players is starting to head towards. And again, to your point, it really is opening up sort of the opportunities for content makers to find the best distribution model for their piece.
The ability to reverse engineer the problem, be able to find the right place, the right time, and put it out there. I think that's what we're looking forward to actually as this stuff starts to clear up, is be able to find that audience for that message. and get it out there. That's the promise of this data-based world.
Yeah,
that we live in.
this just popped in my head, but a great example of what this is like what happened with the new Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I don't know if you're familiar with what happened, but I guess, I don't know if he was a cinematographer or a stuntman. I can't remember the whole story. Forgive me if I get the details incorrect, but he basically shot a dramatic version of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And it got so much heat that Will Smith actually watched it, got into it, and then they took it to Peacock, and now it's being produced as a show for Peacock.
That's brilliant. So, the opportunity's there. It's just right there.
Absolutely is. Yep.
Well, it is time to wrap it up. As always, we can talk forever. I think next week we're going to focus a little bit more on film. But our job and our well, Emmy week, we got to focus on TV.
Yeah, we got to focus on TV. Yeah, that's true. It's Emmy week. That's
our desire is to be able to give some insider information to you guys, reflect the conversations we have on a weekly basis, and put those out there for you so you can think through and critically think about what it takes to make the film, distribute the film, and understand that some of the environment that's moving on. And as we say, breaking Hollywood.
Yep.
Keith, it's so good to be with you this week. I want to give a special thanks out to our producers, Lydia Scarlett and Ethan Hill, who help us behind the scenes and getting this out there and distributed. So thank you all very much. I want to thank Go Social for their social media work they're doing for us and getting the information out there for us. We appreciate all of you behind the scenes. Of course, the team at RevThink, who supports me every day, and my favorite, Keith Rauch, who brings the knowledge to this show. Keith, thank you so much for being part of this.
Thanks, Tim. Always a pleasure to be with you.